It's that time of year again. We're already beginning to plan for next summer. But before we can design 2024's training, we need to take time to reflect on the experiences of 2023 and the lessons it taught us. Join us as we hear the challenges and successes of Gabz summer. Part 2, The Parents. Welcome to Camp Code, a podcast brought to you by Go Camp Pro. After 10 years of podcasting, is there anything left to say? You bet. Because just like people grow and change, so does our industry. Each and every year, there are new challenges, new ways of handling situations, new advice from those doing the work, and new ideas to share. Our commitment to intentional leadership training has only grown stronger. Join us for season 11 of Camp Code as we once again do all that we can to help you develop your best ever leadership training. Welcome, everybody. And we are here for part 2 of So Gabz, how is your summer? But before we dive into this all-important topic, we're just going to take a quick moment to introduce ourselves. Gabrielle.
Hey, everybody. My name is Gabrielle Rail. My pronouns are she, her, elle, and I am one of the camp directors at Camp Ouareau. And Camp Ouareau is an all-girls camp, and we focus on creating a positive environment where kids can discover who they are for girls and gender minorities.
In French and English, as you heard from the pronouns.
Oui.
All right. And I'm Beth, Allison. I'm co-owner of Camp Hacker and Go Camp Pro, and my pronouns are she, her, elle. I am a camp consultant and trainer who loves leadership training and building intentional community. And this season, you will have an opportunity to hear from all of your usual co-hosts, Gabz, Ruby, and me, although not necessarily all at the same time, like today. And we have some special guests lined up who are going to share some great things with us. For our second episode this season, I have the privilege of interviewing Gabrielle Rail, director of Camp Ouareau. And our focus today is on what Gabz experienced working with parents or camper grownups in 2023. And we're all aware that not all of our campers live with their parents, that families are made up of many different combinations of adults helping to raise our campers. But for the purposes of this episode, we may sometimes use the parents as a catch-all for our campers grownups. Okay, so Gabz, in our first episode this season, we discussed some of the challenges and course corrections you had to make in caring for your campers in 2023. Today, we would like to hear how things were the same or different or new or difficult or wonderful with the people who often pay for your campers to attend camp. So taking time to analyze relationships with parents and developing ways to partner with them to have a successful camper experience is also a huge part of what we need to teach our staff. So let's start first with your insights this camp year. How are things with parents?
I'd like to say that, like, for the most part, our parents were, some of them were real bummers, just like straight up bummers. Just like harshing my fun camp vibe for the summer. So we had a large percentage of our families were quite great and communicative and appreciative of the work that we were doing. And then I would say a much larger percentage than usual would have very, very strong and erratic responses to typical camper experiences. And there was almost like there was a lack of, the reaction was so strong. There was no piece of reflection, conversation, understanding, or as we say in French, using your gros bon sens, which is just basically your common sense that perhaps what the camper's expressing is not exactly what happened at camp. And so the reactions, as we were talking before we actually started recording, we would have, of course, in the past, camp families that would have maybe some reactions, some upsetness, but that was more like round valleys of ups and downs. Now it's very, very sharp, rocky peaks of going ups and downs with our families. So a lot to manage there.
Yes, absolutely.
Yeah.
And what did you find were some of their big concerns or stressors this year?
And that goes with like the erratic part. You don't know, and it's interesting. Alexan, who's worked with us for many years, who handles our phone, is cool as a cucumber under
Mhm.
stressful situations.
She is indeed.
She is. We changed her phone. She asked if she could change the phone, the camp cell phone, with a different model because there was too much negative experiences that she had with the previous one, that every time it would ring, she was nervous about what was on the other end of the phone. And so just changing the case and the phone itself helped her be less stressed. But that's just an example of things that we just couldn't anticipate. So, for example, we had a family be very upset, campers saying they didn't eat enough. We have a policy that we ask every meal if people had enough, if they enjoyed what they liked from our leadership team. We also have questionnaires of the campers, which the campers said that they ate enough at the end. But they said to their parents that they didn't have enough food, which is something that I would love to hear more about and make sure that in the future that wouldn't happen. But the parents' reaction was very, very strong. And one of the things that they had mentioned to us was that the reason why their child didn't eat enough is because we're pocketing the money of the food that we're not giving to the kids. And this to me was just like, this is such an out there assumption.
Yeah.
And it just showed me how much we work really hard to build trust and connections with our families, but how much more I still want to do that. And then also taking a beat and just understanding that sometimes where some parents are in that moment in their life at that time, it's such a
Right.
high stressor that their trust in anything is it's not repairable, even if you haven't done anything. So that's and ironically that camper wants to come back. And so it's a those things I find quite difficult. So we have, that's just one example of probably at least 10 that are just so out there, which we would maybe experience one every 5 years. That was almost laughable, but now
Okay.
it's gone up quite a bit.
It's multiplied.
Yes.
Okay. Well, we will stop for a break to hear from our sponsor. And when
Mm.
we come back, we're going to hear a bit about how Gabz and her staff had to shift to deal with some of these issues so that not only were the campers and staff happy, but the families as well. Remember what drew you to the camp experience? UltraCamp knows it wasn't for paperwork. That's why they've crafted an all-in-one platform to streamline your program management. Powerful tools that put you in control of your information. Automate critical processes like registration and billing, generate customized reports to gain valuable insights, streamline your hiring process, including integrated background checks, and quickly communicate with your clients and donors. UltraCamp's goal is to help their clients spend less time in the office and more time doing what they love. Want to know if UltraCamp is the right fit for you? They offer free customized demo sessions so you can see their software in action. And you can sign up at ultracampmanagement.com/campcode. And for our Camp Code listeners, here's an exclusive offer to enhance staff retention year-round. Get UltraCamp staff communication calendar with free customizable email templates at ultracampmanagement.com/campcode. And we are back, and we're hoping that by sharing Gab's story, just little bits and pieces of it, we'd be here for days to hear her entire story, but that's the same for all of us. Even if it all doesn't resonate with you, I think you're going to find a few little pieces that you can add to next year's training or things that you'd like to think about or work on with your leadership team, or at the very least, find some comfort knowing you weren't alone this past summer with some of your struggles with your families. Alrighty, so Gabz, what did you need to do differently? And like our first episode, I want to
Yeah.
divide this into parts. So I want to do 3 parts. So what changes did you make
Mhm.
prior to the summer of 2023 to deal with families ahead of this past summer, if any? Like, what did you change about leadership training and training your staff to deal with families?
So as I mentioned, we extended our training quite significantly, and more importantly, we hired more leadership team members so that we can up our communication game with our families. So that piece I think really played in our favor this summer. Not only we pretty much informed our families of almost everything. Camper X got into a little bit of an argument with Camper Y, and this is how it was resolved. Just wanted to keep you informed. And then we get a message back saying, "Oh, wow, thank you so much for that." It's like, no problem. But because of the year before, because some of our campers still learning how to people, some of these typical issues that would happen could escalate quite quickly. And
Okay.
before you knew it, one camper might have to be sent home. So we really want to make sure that families knew, especially of interactions with other campers, what's going on, and not to downplay it and not to upplay it, but just be, hey, we're just keeping you in the loop. We did the same actually with our healthcare center, healthcare professionals as well. We equip them to communicate with their families much quicker, but with a little bit of a safety net from our logistics team. And so, just from a wellness point of view, because of the anxiety about COVID, we are just
Mm-hmm.
informing people of colds and just saying this is typical. These are what's happening. This is how we've dealt with it for your child. Just want to let you know. Also, a lot of questions about, is this typical at home? Has this happened before? So we could start building that trust. So that we had already in place, and I think it's really, really served, um, really helped us a lot. And um, I would say that AI is also very helpful with some of those difficult messages home, and trying to write complicated messages home, or even a text or a script for for our leadership team to talk to families. We use that as well. And within our organization, when we're communicating, there's an extra layer of toughness because we do have to communicate in French as well as in English. So there's a translation piece. So trying to make sure that we had staff off of site that could translate some of the text for maybe our more comfortable English speaking leadership team, or
Mm-hmm.
our more comfortable French speaking, that was also implemented.
And did you find there were some issues that just you had to do by phone, that
Yes.
email and text just wasn't going to cut it at that point?
Yes. So we talked a lot with, and of course, there's definitely phone calls that I personally made.
Okay.
And again, sort of just trying to just tell families, we're keeping you in the loop. We also just want to know if there's anything that, that you do at home that maybe
Right.
could help us here. We did have some responses with some of our campers that were struggling a little bit more with adapting to camp, where you could tell that the families were tired, and they're tired with their child, and they
Isn't
didn't have
everybody
answers.
tired these
Yeah, I
days though?
think
Like
so.
really, we're
I
just
think
tired
so.
people.
I think so. And so we would have, this doesn't surprise me. What do you want me to say? What do you want me to do about it? Type of responses.
Okay.
And so then we would just say, oh no, we just want to keep you updated. We just wanted to see if there's anything that you do at home. Here's what we're going to do. We'll let you know if there's anything that works. So maybe you can, utilize that back at your place if that's what you would like. But it's really, really building those relationships. So I think that as a whole has been very helpful. And so much so that I've had conversations with some families after camp that what I could tell is that they just felt supported, and oh, we are having a hard time with this. And some families on their end tried to downplay certain things. And of course, as we all know, which is one of my favorite things about kids, is they tell you everything that's happening at home, everything that's underneath the kitchen counter, they tell
Mm-hmm.
you. So if the parents are sort of have their guards up and you talk to the campers, then we can go back and say, Camper X has mentioned that she's never slept once by herself in her own bedroom. She always sleeps with you guys. What's something that we can do to make this successful? I don't know if we can, and it's sort of like, they're like, she told you that. So, and it's no judgment, you're going with no judgment. But I definitely, what I see is parents not knowing, they're having a hard time deciphering, understandably so, having a hard time deciphering the line between what is anxiety and what is um, a habit that is formed at home, and sort of how do you start to adjust that habit so it becomes no longer a habit, such as going and sleeping with your parents in the middle of the night and not triggering what they're concerned is anxiety.
Mm-hmm.
And so they don't know what that line is. And so I think that sometimes having an outside perspective when it's welcome is very, very wonderful. And I spoke to one parent in particular whose camper only spoke up, a month after camp, saying that she had a hard time with another camper. And the parent, again, she had some good common sense, said, like, this other camper actually sounds how I was at that age. She's kind of a little snarky and a little, this, but deep down she like cares, but she also, when she gets bored, she maybe teases people. She's like, but my kid doesn't know how to handle that. And she only told us a month later. And so her and I talked about how can we build, resiliency is such a word that's used so much. I'm starting to use just language like muscle memory. How do we help that camper develop muscle memory when they're uncomfortable, that they know, okay, when I'm uncomfortable, these are the actions that I could take. And I said, I think we can work on that with her. And she was so grateful. It was being able to show them a little bit what we do behind the scenes. But that wasn't the case for every family. They didn't
Gotcha.
appreciate my expertise all the time, Beth.
I can't imagine. They clearly don't know you. So that's sort of how you shifted. AI is really interesting that was brought into how you can do things. That's really fascinating. And I think something we'll tackle in future episodes is how we can use that to our advantage and how we have to be careful with how that's used during training or staff applications, that sort of thing. But is there anything that you would do differently for next leadership training now that 23 is over and you're like, if we put this in place now, or we have a session about this in 2024, just to kind of help our staff understand, being a sleepaway camp, you do not have parents with you except opening and closing days. And so you really only see them at the beginning unless you have that contact, which is often done by leadership team members rather than, the counselors themselves, throughout the time that the camper's at your camp. So anything you want to change or do differently, or any things you want to think about doing differently? You may not know how to do it yet, but any other training things you want to think about for next year?
I think again, highlighting, getting specific about what are the new needs of campers, and being realistic with the staff that you're hiring, that now campers, struggle with the X, Y, and Z. And that's what we need to focus on. And this is actually quite typical. And it's kind of confusing to some of our staff members that somebody that's in grade 5 doesn't know how to do something, or is reacting in a certain way. And they almost think that this is not typical, but it is now the new norm. And so helping our staff members understand that campers need a lot more guidance, and showing the why behind it, I think will be very, very helpful, because there is a stressor with staff members about having a couple of what we call opportunity campers within their groups, that kindness is not practiced as much as what it is at home, that just their own basic needs, how they take care of themselves, isn't practiced as much. And sort of helping our counselors know that this is now a new norm, and this is how we can help campers develop these life skills. And it's not to say that our campers right now have less life skills than the campers before. They just have different life skills. Some of them are quite articulate about their feelings, are very capable with their boundaries. Sometimes I hear a 10-year-old set boundaries, and I'm like, oh, how did you do that? If you could just repeat that sentence, I'm going to write it down. I will try to also do this boundary language. It's quite impressive. It's just that it's not the same struggle that our staff members experienced at that age. And I think it's a little bit of a shock to be so close in age, but actually have quite a generational separation. And so I think helping them understand a little bit clear what the difficulties are is helpful. And for me, the top 5 is the home loneliness, homesick, the adjusting resiliency from being away from your family, the sort of you only live once sort of like mentality. Let's just throw everything out, and who cares about the repercussions. Just how to interact with others, and speak up for what you need, or be advocating for yourself. These are some of the things that we're seeing that that campers are having a hard time from. Also just brushing their teeth and everyday basic care. There's some certain things that they just haven't practiced because they haven't gone to as many sleepovers, basically.
Right. And I
Yeah.
think, just helping staff think about how they have struggled now and letting them see it, because sometimes you don't see it when you're in it, right? How they have struggled through the pandemic and the world beyond. Not that it's technically over, but we're not in lockdowns and those kinds of things anymore. But how that is different. And when they were 10, they didn't have to go through a world of that. They didn't have to go through the fear and the anger and, all of that kind of stuff 8 years ago when they were 10.
Yeah.
So I think all of that is something we have to remember and recognize rather than just saying, okay, it's over, or going back to the way we used to do things, because it's not going to work for anybody anymore.
I think so. And I think also as camps, all of our staff have first aid. I'm sure your camp, all of your staff has first aid. I think mental wellness first aid is also a necessity for all of your staff. And that's because what I love about first aid is you're dealing with the body first and foremost. When somebody's having an anxiety attack, you have to deal with the body, the breathing, the et cetera, et cetera. And I think it provides a little bit more control, awareness, for our staff members. So I think that kind of training inevitably, before we know it, it's going to become probably a standard within most of our organizations.
Exactly. All right. Well, thank you, Gab. And as we alluded to in episode 1, we're not going to make Gab recap her own brilliance. So we'll have her recap in the next show, I think.
Yeah.
But
I do have one thing, Beth, to just add if you're a fun, not funny, but funny comment one of our families said to Jackie, who's my teammate, who's also my mother, but also very experienced and well recognized in the industry. He had mentioned to her that he thought that she was inexperienced when it came to camping and dealing with children and staff.
Only been in camping 45 years.
Yeah, but I was like, is this sexist or just ignorant? I don't know where you're coming from. But it did get me thinking about how personally we're portraying ourselves and our own expertise. And I think a lot of camp professionals do have a hard time showcasing their professionalism and what they do know and their experience. And
we're trying to make it fun.
We're trying to make it fun. We're trying to also, a lot of camp directors, it's not about us. We want to lift up our staff. We want to lift up our kids, but we want to be in the background. And I'm very much like that. Jackie's very, very much like that. And it's made me think about, we're not doing we no longer can kind of put ourselves in the background. We've been saying that for years, but the fact that somebody said that we were inexperienced, and as you say, when we open up our starter show, you say you live, breathe, leadership and community. I live, breathe this stuff. That's all I think about. I'm constantly reading and learning about child development, like in the here and now. What are the next steps in training? Everything. I can't get enough of it. And so how are we positioning ourselves as professionals? How are we actually advertising it to our families? And I'm not saying it's to squash that one person that's saying, hey, you're inexperienced, but I think it's to inform the parents, like the parent that I had a chat with just recently about building that muscle memory for her kid in speaking up and et cetera, et cetera. How do we help them be able to advocate for the work that we're doing? Because I don't see in a short-term time that this sort of very strong reactions that are going up and down, I don't see that polishing off and smoothing off soon. And we kind of need a little bit of a protective guard, and our own families that do see the work that we're doing, that do have le gros bon sens, the common sense, to say, oh, well, did you know that Gabrielle speaks about this? And did you know that their staff went to this conference? And did you read this article that they talk about how to get your kids ready for camp, or maybe your kid's not ready for camp, answer these top 5 questions. I think that we kind of need to show ourselves as the experts within our industry. Because if Jackie can be called inexperienced, I think then it's very telling of what
Yes.
some people think about the people about us and what we do at camp. Not everybody, but
Yep.
some. And that some could be enough. So that's something that we're going to be shifting marketing wise this year. And I'm going to try to get comfortable with showcasing, our expertise at Ouareau.
Which is great. And Travis Allison has been saying this for years, is
Years.
that we tend to put a picture of the camp director or the executive director or whatever on our website, maybe a little paragraph, but that's about it. And everything else, as you said, we uplift our staff and we always give the credit away. It's just who we are in the industry. But parents want to know who's in charge, who's the bottom line. And if you are in charge and you are the bottom line, what experience do you have to make you be that person? So I do think that will help with relationships with parents and build that trust and that confidence in us, but also within the industry as well. There are still people out there who see us as glorified babysitters who are just fun. And yes, camp is fun, but there is so much more to camp than that. Fun is sort of the byproduct, right? Like we're building future world leaders. We just do it in a fun way. So,
which is the smart and effective way, to be honest.
And getting our purpose out there and our qualifications and our experience is important to build that trust and to have that level of, okay, so, she's got a university degree. She's owned her own camp for 30 years. She's, whatever it happens to be. He has a degree in psychology, whatever it is. I think that's important.
I think,
and what we do with the knowledge outside of July and August.
That's exactly. And then connecting that also to our staff, making sure our staff know that we do go to conferences, we listen to certain podcasts, we read these books. These are the shifts we're making within our organization to best serve our campers next year. All of those things it's building trust within our community. And I love marketing, but I do have a hard time talking about what I personally do. I do have a hard time lifting up some of the stuff we do at Ouareau. I just kind of want people to come to camp and experience the life-changing experience that it can be, what camp can be. But we're not building trust with families that way. And so if we put the focus of building trust, building connections, we do have to talk about the work that we're doing so that families do understand we do more than just work during the summer and do not much during the winter.
Right.
So watching TV,
take 10 months off a year.
Watching the Disney Channel. There we go. That was just sort of my last little.
But I'm so glad you made it. That's an excellent point. So thank you for adding that in. I appreciate that.
Problem. Well, you heard it here, everybody. Jackie Rail is inexperienced.
Yeah. We'll just line Jackie Rail up against all her awards she's won for this particular job and go with that. There you
go, everybody.
All right. Here's how you can get involved in our podcast. You can let us know your thoughts on this episode using the hashtag Camp Code on any social media. You can also tell us any topics you would like us to discuss, any guests you recommend we have on the show, and there will be a slew of them this year, and any great leadership training tips you have to share. We would love to hear from you. And if you found our podcast to be useful, we would love it if you would leave us a rating on your favorite podcasting app. If you would like to contact either one of us individually, here's how you do it. Gabrielle?
You can check out where I work at ouareau.com, ouareau.com, all of the vowels, and you can get in touch with me at info@ouareau.com.
Thank you. You can email me at beth@gocamp.pro, or I'm on Instagram at topaz_fae, F-A-E. All right. So for our next podcast, we're going to talk about some ways to specifically train your staff on some of these new issues with campers and parents before summer begins. Our final segment on each podcast is a best practice for leadership training. And again, we'd love to hear some of yours so that we can share them out with everybody. You can tell us what they are using the hashtag Camp Code. And this week's practice is from me. I have a very short and sweet one this week. Someone once told me that the difficult people in your community, so be that staff, camper, donor, board members, parents, have a story. They aren't choosing to be difficult. They may just be insecure, lack self awareness, have pain or stress in their life. Our job is to find out why. One of the best pieces of advice I ever heard about dealing with parents was to stop seeing them as an issue to deal with and start seeing them as someone to fight for. And this change in perspective allowed me to find the empathy I had for them, which was truthfully occasionally buried underneath all the other things I had on my plate during the summer and all the ways that I thought I had already prepped them to not have issues. So let's all remember to stop seeing our campers, grown-ups as an issue to deal with and start seeing them as people to fight for. And we will delve into other ways how to do that in future episodes. Camp Code is part of the Go Camp Pro podcast network, and you can check out all of our other podcasts at gocamp.pro/podcasts. And this year we're adding a new one called The Pudding because the proof is in the pudding. And Travis, Allison, and Dr. Mandy Baker will be sharing scientific proof to improve our staff recruitment and retention. Yes, there is scientific proof out there, and Mandy's going to share it with you. So you'll find the pudding in the Camp Hacker podcast feed. And a lot of that could be information that you can use to do some of the stuff Gab and I were just talking about moments ago. So thanks so much to Gabz for her vulnerability and insights these past 2 episodes. We look forward to figuring out together what else we can do to prepare to support our people even more in 2024. From all of us here at Camp Code, thanks for the listening, friends.